start this next session. We have Springbrook Express here today, Chad Griff. He is going to kind of walk us through the system, talk us through some new updates. So I just kind of wanted to start by kind of getting a raise of hands. How many people are using Springbrook?
Or its old iteration called Bias.
No,
Yeah.
trying to be really intentional right now. Non-users? Okay, cool. So we'll do a little bit of like, here's the software, a little introduction of, what it has to offer, and then kind of get into a little deeper dive for some of our current users. Sound good?
What organization are you with?
Boston City.
What's that? All righty. Let's see. Could you make our full screen there?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, can everyone hear me? I got a little bit of a cold from congestion, so if I need to speak up, let me know. Okay. All right. So first off, I'm going to be working in Springbrook 7. So this is the cloud online application. If you don't have version 7, there'll be new features in here that are engineered specifically for 7 forward. I'm accessing through the web. So this is access that you can get anywhere simply by logging into a cloud service and then logging in with your normal username and password for the software. Okay, so State of Washington, of course, has bars and all the fun reporting that you have to go through with that, in terms of your accounting, and then you're accountable to all of your normal grantors. So for those of you who hasn't seen the system, it is designed to work with the accounting and reporting systems for Washington State. It is a cash basis software. Of course, hopefully everyone here is cash basis. We've made a number of enhancements over the years, and everything you see in here is going to be, essentially a visual drill down accounting system. Some of you might not use all the features. That's fine. I'm going to be looking at and doing a brief tour of advanced payroll. If you're still using basic payroll, I think there should be very few people left using basic for grant software. And then we'll be looking at the new features in grant management. This particular data set is pretty rich. It's some of the data is from a user who was an extensive user of Smartsheets. And Wes has engineered a huge amount of functionality if you use that particular program for your financial management, budgetary management, and whatever you want to do with that. I'm going to be touching on kind of enhancements in terms of budgeting. There'll probably be some discussion in terms of design, because I know it's caused me a lot of headache in terms of figuring things out, is that pre-funded grants sounds like nice to get the money up front, but it's actually a complete pain to try to deal with. We do have some ways to do that, and I'll talk about those briefly. So just, diving into the software here, I'm going to be using the modern view. Okay, so this is kind of the new face. Does anyone use the modern view in version 6, or do you always stick with classic? So is that modern view, hand view? Just okay, a couple brave people. All right. So everything you see here is going to be in the modern view. Some of the things that, and I will say with the web version, it is much better to have a bigger monitor when you're working with this, because your small monitors, it tends to crunch the data a little bit, or just get a larger resolution. As just a brief overview, the software here on your general ledger records all of your transactions, both your claims, payroll, treasurer's receipts, and so on. Everything is drilled down as normal. I can view or dig down into the transactions. Everything is linked through an accounts payable module. AP is where you'll assign your grant codes. Okay, you'll be able to break up your transaction however you want it to be distributed. You can assign your program and task. Program, can also be referred to as outcome, depending on the language and terminology that you want to use. And where that falls in terms of programs and tasks is set in the accounts payable. Let's see. Maybe I can drill down even to the AP. Yeah. Okay. And then it brings up into your distribution. Cash portion is handled up top. It may look like a single-sided entry if you're familiar with in terms of accounting, but the section up on top that says amount and account, that is going to be the cash side of your double entry accounting system. And then you have your revenue or expenditure down below in the bars distribution. Keep in mind everything and all transactions and almost all actions in here carry an audit trail. So if you're ever interested in what went on with the transaction, who made that input, etc., you have a little audit trail buttons. And this will demonstrate if there's any changes beyond the original creation, or I have a global that's available, which allows me to look, at basically, like say, for instance, if I just want to, there we go. I can range on just about any bit of data in any time period. Let's see. And it will show me, it gives me the option to take a look at, I can look at a module specific. I can look at, accounts. I can look at bank accounts. I can look at all kinds of things in terms of payroll. I can look at, whatever I want to particularly see in whatever particular date range down to the specific user. Okay. That's very handy when it comes to understanding things that change. Say the invoice that mysteriously disappears and you're wondering, where the heck that thing went. This will allow you to look at and see everything behind the screens. Okay. Your transactions module connects to your chart of accounts. Accounts are by year. There's been a lot of construction ideas in terms of how you set up your chart of accounts. Okay, if you've been a long time user of the software, previously you used to have one fund per grant, right? We no longer do this. We actually now have kind of simplified this down to one general fund and one grant fund, because you can get your information reporting out of your grant fund. And you don't necessarily have to run each grant as its own fund anymore, because we have definitely some power users over time that have gotten up to fund numbers in the 999 range, and you can't really, then you got to go back and reuse fund numbers and so on. So it does bring up a little bit of a challenge. And so since we no longer, you can use the chart of accounts for your Schedule 16 and 15 work, so that way you go through in the annual report section here, we do have, Schedule 15 and Schedule 16 grants that we can assign to any given fund. And that used to be the way that you tracked your grants. However, now you do have the Schedule 15 and 16 capabilities within the grant module itself. And the improvements that Wes has made is basically, it's way easier to just do your reporting over in the grant module, and you don't have to have separate funds for everything. What we have ended up doing, this is an entity here that has two funds, right? So in most situations, this is actually all you need. And we have integrated advanced payroll and the grant module with this concept in that all of your payroll flows through your general fund. Okay. Because your payroll is mixed. There's grant activity and then there is non-grant activity. You can't bill to your grants. Over time, Wes has engineered into this, our chief software engineer, if you're not familiar with him. Within grant management now, we have two functions, overhead adjustment and payroll adjustments. And what those do is transfer costs from your general fund, your chart of accounts and where that's set up, over into your grant fund. Your grant revenue flows into your grant fund. And then as your grants close, there is if you have any excess, it can be transferred back to your general fund. If you have situations where, like if you're maximizing your match or you have pre-funded grants and so on, you can manage your transfers in and out such that your general fund hopefully maintains that positive and growing balance that we all like to have. But we only want non-grant transactions in the general fund. So the engineering here is that we take all grant payroll costs out of the general fund and we take all overhead adjustment, your overhead costs out of the general fund and we put it in the grant fund. So ultimately, it's when you're managing it, you're managing a system where anything that is in excess in your grant funds can be transferred back into your general fund to maintain that positive balance. So in the design here, I know it kind of looks like a wall of text, organized by bars code, all the revenues in this particular entity's case, they're doing their budget with smart sheets. And so that's where you don't see the budget being entered on these lines in terms of revenues or expenditures.
Do you know why they don't use the budget in here?
I don't know. It's an excellent question.
Yeah.
But I think that, they think it's twice the work, but I like putting the budget in because I can get the information. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
You can.
well, I can go from Express into Smart Sheets. I can't go Smart Sheets into Express. Did I understand your question correctly?
I was wondering if you could smart sheet and export it into this module in Springbrook.
Oh, no, I don't think he took the, he doesn't go that way. He doesn't go from Smart Sheets into Express. It talks the other way. The budget entry process here though is fairly easy to do. I mean, like literally just type in arrow down, Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, so this is more advanced grant module. So
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
The grant module, you do budgeting for your grants,
Mhm.
and then this is like that separate kind of thing. Is there any plans long term in trying to connect the two in some way?
That's a reasonable question. Because the grant fund essentially is an aggregation of all of your programs. I don't know. That is something that could be done. Like say, for instance, if you enter a budget number in each one of your grants, could there be an aggregation tool that runs through?
What I'll say is, looking some really great planning components in there that
Yeah.
I think I would like to figure out how to use eventually, where it says, fiscal year 24 and 25 and 26.
Mm.
And so a lot of our grants are multi-year.
Yes.
And say we have 100,000 payroll, but year one, we may be spending 20 and year two, we're spending 50. And so it's like, that's where our challenge is with some of the from our grant to our budget. And, one of the, thoughts I had, and I don't know, possibility, right, I know like software limitations and such, but it'd be really cool if we could try to assign portions of that, or at least figure out a way to like import our payroll budget and put it in as like, okay, this percentage is in this year, this percentage is in that year, either in setup or something. I don't know if how possible it is, but and then pull it over into our regular budgeting in software. Because I think that's what happens when we're doing stuff in Smartsheet. Is that's what I'm doing. Is I'm trying to figure out of all of my budget how much somebody's going to need next year, so that when I bring it to the board, they can approve it. And I would love to do it in software. I'll say that I don't necessarily want to use Smartsheet.
Right. I
would love to just make it all central, because I do pull out, do all that stuff on my end. But just thinking about long term, and so I don't assume it's version 8 or 9 kind of scenario. But it'd be really great to think about how we can take our grant module and populate the chart accounts budgeting in some way. That's a little, so that we can, doesn't feel like it's double extra work, right?
Right.
Like that's where, I think that's where people are coming from in some cases. It's like, oh, I gotta do it again.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, it'd be great in the grant management module to have that multi-year budgeting option. Mhm. Yeah, in a perfect world, right?
Right.
But next year, no.
We're thinking long term, right? It's
Yeah.
just, we're always, and all of we're always thinking about ways that, the software could help us to use that more. And so.
Yeah.
I sent lots of questions.
Well, but here's the thing is that, this is essentially rapid application development, and there are, Wes has always, kind of maintained a, how can I help you do the functions that you want to do in the software? So things like that, where we need to, or can do enhancements, then yeah, we would want to look at stuff like that. So things that would be written up that we could, put in as a proposal or a ticket, starting off with the simple layers first, so we can build on that complexity.
I can totally read it.
Good. Then do so. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Do so and send it.
Not shy.
Good. No, not at all. And so that, there, I think then the question is, well, how do you take, because in the grant module, we look at payroll and cash and overhead when you're setting your budgets, right? So the question is, how do we take those and then throw them into the bar system where we have, training services, professional services, cost share, partner payment, how do we link those things together? How do we have that cross reference? And, that'll kind of be the key. We need to have that translation table built, so where we can go from the grant module into the financial budget in the greater detail that we want to see when we work with our bar system. Okay. Okay, let's forward here. A lot of these are nuts and bolts that everyone's seen. If you haven't seen it before, the accounts payable module, as I had mentioned, this is where the program and tasks get assigned. You can use it with POs. There is a fairly extensive PO module. If you're that large, some people are just like, it's just an extra layer. I don't necessarily want to use it, but it is possible if you have multiple decision makers working with the software, submitting invoices and so on, you can have POs and you can work with them within the AP system. Multiple layers of confirmation. For instance, all of these AP items are pending, so they have to be approved before they go out. So depending on your organization, if you're distributed and you have people, submitting things that need approval before they get paid, all of that can be done through these processes, be done remotely. You could have somebody out in the field submitting an invoice, just depending on your particular structure. You can have that multi-layer of approval, especially when it comes to APs and POs. With that basic, let's see, we'll kind of intersperse the report side with grant management since we're kind of moving forward here. Okay, grant module, fun wall of text. Underneath each one of these is your underlying programs and tasks. Each one of these can be set to enforce their budgets. They've got their outcomes listed. You can see you've got your 3 types: payroll, cash, overhead in terms of your budgets. Matches included here. And every single grant allows you to get very granular with their tasks, whether it be things that are cash activity, travel, salary, so on. Your benefits are effectively considered overhead when they're generated. When you run your payroll, your wage flows to your wage bars, your benefits flow into your benefit bars, and then depending on what grant they came from, after your payroll is complete, you use the overhead adjustment tool, which basically takes the benefit costs that are eligible for grant reimbursement and then moves that from the cost from your general fund and then into your grant. You would pay your benefits as normal. The benefits come out when you run a voucher. Let's see. Oh yeah, this one.
It's actually part of the payroll adjustment because
Yes.
it's the comp rate.
Yes, thank you. So here, when you're working with this, you would see one, you have your salary at the comp rate.
Mhm.
You would have any overhead adjustments you would see over here on the right, calculated, on that overhead percentage. And Corey, thank you for steering my mind in the correct direction. When you're billing your salary, you are billing at a comprehensive rate that includes all wages and benefits, correct? Okay. The accounting for the benefits, is all within the payroll module, breaks it out, sends it to the general fund. You do have the cost that moves over to your grants, and then when you're doing your vouchering, since you are doing it on a comp rate, this is what will come out through the vouchers.
So that adjustment is just offsetting against your benefit payments that you've made. And it's saying, oh, you've received payment for, reimbursement from this grant for this benefit payment as part of the comp rate, and it just offsets.
Some of the fun things here. Who has ever had issues when they're vouchering because they were trying to voucher on a date range within the month, but not the whole month? Anyone? Okay. That is now fixed.
Mhm.
In version 7, you can now say, for instance, voucher from month 1 through month 2, day 15. So you could do a 45-day voucher period. And then you can do day 16 through day 31, a 15-day voucher period there in the second month. Wes has engineered it such that the system doesn't give you fits like when you tried to voucher in the middle of an accounting period. Okay. So that does that functionality a lot better. It still has to be contiguous. You can't say, okay, I'm going to voucher for 6 months but I want to do a separate voucher for these 15 days within that 6-month period, as a second voucher. Still can't do that. But your contiguous, when you're doing your vouchers, you can go mid-month. You don't have to do it, quite to the end of the month. So if you need to get that voucher out and you are going to still make payments in the remainder of the month, if you're doing it mid-month, you're not going to run into problems like you have in the past. You can do that mid-month vouchering. So when things are vouchered, of course, it goes over to the invoice module. That's where you can create your invoice, and when your grantor reimburses you, you post it against your receivable or the invoice. That's located in the cash receiving module in our invoice control center. I will say a couple things. One of the things when you're working with invoices and you're vouchering, once you've invoiced a voucher, whatever you do, don't go back and delete the voucher and try to recreate it, because then it loses the links. And then you're saying, well, I'm missing this voucher disappeared. Where is it? Or this AP disappeared. Where is it? And that's one of the things is that we do need to make sure that when you link things together, that you don't go back in and just delete a voucher without deleting the associated AP, knowing that you did that. This is where audit trails come in, when I play the missing voucher game. It's a lot, you can make modifications. You can, say, for instance, when I'm just going to dive in here again. You see if I have any open transactions. No. Okay, it's all 23. All right. When we're working with vouchers, normally the system looks for programs and tasks attached to APs or payroll items that have a given grant, outcome and task assigned to them. You can add those if you need to. Like, say, for instance, if you're doing conversion process, you get to have the fun of entering historical vouchers. And Ryan, I know you know all about that good stuff. But if you have things that are off the system for whatever reason, say, credit card payment was made for the employee and they had to do a reimbursement process, and that's outside of regular channels of payroll or so on, you could add those into any given voucher as a manual entry. And that would be, typically for your cash items. Usually all payroll aspects are run through advanced payroll. But when you get into the vouchers, you can look at all the detail. Anything that's typically in red is an add by hand. So you can see here where those things are added. You can see that adjustments have been made, just to make sure you've got, you can route the costs to the correct place. And it's pretty obvious what's a manual addition versus things that are coming directly off the system. Within your grants, you have your Schedule 16 links. You can, select your billing methods. Are you using composite rate versus a contract rate? You always have to specify how your grants are being ordered in terms for the reporting to work. Whether that's you're reporting commission by program or task, ecology by program or task, or other grant forms. You can use grants as match. You can allow them to be used as match. And when it comes to payroll in version 7, Wes has significantly enhanced the search functions within payroll to allow time to be used as match. So it's a lot easier to assign costs as match, especially payroll costs.
In the timesheet?
In the timesheets. So this one was a new one to me. I think he just engineered this. Let's see. Let's look at payroll. Okay. So this is the timesheet entry. I'm assuming everyone is familiar with entering time, except for the few people that haven't used the software.
A lot like AP, if you haven't used the software where you can link the program and the task for the grants.
Sure.
So that when you're doing it in AP, you're doing it in timesheets, it just all pulls into that voucher.
And it's just simply a matter of picking. You know, you can go through and pick, you know, what grant you're working on. Your individual employees can work in the grants. You know, they can enter their own time. They can enter their own tasks. Some people want their employees to be able to do it. Other people just simply want to have people, you know, that collect all the timesheets and then have one person enter them. This is up to you with what you want to do. You do have an extensive note function, and you can print out your notes on reports that, you know, so that way you can provide them with your supporting documents to your grantor. It runs through an approval process. You know, your payroll supervisor will run through, mark all the time approved. And then once things are approved and locked down, then you can send it to advanced payroll. And then payroll will look through, it'll aggregate the hours together, pay people on the basis of, you know, what their pay range, their step, do all the deductions, et cetera. And that's almost separate from the grant side of accounting. The program will record all costs to the general ledger, but it also links here into your timesheet entries. So that way it knows how much to take out and assign to which grants. And then the time and the cost flows into the grant module, into your vouchering section. So that way you can,
Question?
yes, go ahead.
Any difference of the study between salary stuff and hourly stuff?
Mostly that occurs in payroll. So when you have a salaried individual, it will still break down to an hourly cost versus an hourly individual, which breaks down to an hourly cost, you know, but you have to worry, you know, within your payroll, you know, you have hourly people are eligible for overtime or comp time. Salaried individuals might just get, you know, admin time or, you know, whatever your particular pay arrangement has. When you take, like, say, for instance, an hourly person who's taking sick time, they'll be paid for that sick time. A salaried person who's taking sick time just gets the time. The payroll software itself.
Before you go there, Chad, Wes said that he was gonna add the functionality to electronically sign pay cards. Is that in version 7 now?
Excellent question. So he sent me this white paper here. I'll try to read this here. So have an electronic signature for employees and supervisors that will print, also additional footer type to use.
Okay,
So I would say yes,
yeah.
it does.
Can you share this?
Yeah, you want me to just email it to you?
That'd be great. Yeah, and I'll share it with the group.
Yeah, sounds good.
It's just a module within, yeah, in that grants module.
Yeah, so within grant management, the pay card function is your timesheets. You can, yes, they can, yeah. With your setup, depending on how many seats you have, like if you have a small staff, pretty easy to provision everyone with a seat. That way they can log in. They have the rights to access the pay cards. You can manage your rights such that, you know, your field staff might be able to look at the grants that they specifically work with. You know, your supervisors, you can give them rights to look at reports, budgets, enter AP. Everything has, all modules and all functions have rights that are assigned to each employee. So depending on the level of rights that you want, you make that assignment. But the very basic, all employees would have access to the employee pay cards and they could enter their own time. And as far as the advanced payroll side of things, it's basically set up here in your employee list. Consider each one of these as like a template stamp. Okay, each one of these stamps will have a, complete set of pay items, accruals, deductions and benefits, and the program, on the basis of the information that you put in, will go through, and each paycheck, the template will stamp on that paycheck. And then you simply take in the hours. So if, in this case, if people are entering their own time, if you're a payroll staff, your biggest task is just to make sure that you have an accurate, you just have an accurate employee stamp, that you've managed all of the deductions and pay rates and items. And again, excuse me for a little squishiness here. So each one of these items here is an individual paycheck that's been stamped from the employee's pay record. Over time, you can see here, anything in red represents input from the pay cards.
That means if staff member don't do pay card, they cannot get paid.
Correct.
That's good.
It's kind of part of your job function to put in your time sheets. I know my supervisor gets a little surly when I don't enter my time. But yeah, especially if you're hourly, you kind of do have to enter your time. Now, you can see here that it's bringing in all of the time that were entered from the pay cards in a much more simplified format. It's not really worried about, it's got a standard distribution that it's working with. L&I classes can be swapped depending whether you have field time or office time or other rates. And you can see that the program and task are all assigned in here.
Pay card must have, option.
Yes, it certainly does. And then the distribution is set up, basically where that goes in the bars. When we're using the new system where we have a simplified, general fund, grant fund, typically if it's field wage costs, you've got a field wage bars, an admin wage bars, and then your distribution, your benefit bars.
Does it track PDO balance?
Yes. So you can see that this particular person had 40 hours of vacation used here. So at, additions or subtractions from your paid time off banks are recorded in the time and earnings. And then you have a totals page here. So this tracks your balances, vacation, sick, holiday, exchange, cost, whatever particular structure you have.
Addition, with the accrual PDO.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
the balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in this case, where you see here in the earned column, 5.54 hours, that is, basically the accrual is set up so it is accruing per paycheck. And, in this case, it's accruing X number of hours over 26 pay periods, which is why you get the little odd amount, 5.54. It's probably like 100 and something.
And we
Yeah.
can do like manual adjustment.
You can, yes. Yep, you do, if you're payroll staff, you do have, you can adjust vacation, you can adjust sick, you can adjust any item on here.
Can we do prorated approval for part-time?
If you want, yes. So every employee's record has an FTE percentage. So if you have like a half-time employee, you just put 0.5 FTEs and it will prorate approvals.
How about they just work different hours?
You could do the accrual, like PTO is 1 hour per 40 hours worked.
Oh,
So
you have, that's a good, yes, we do calculated, like WSPL. you know, it's just a percentage, and we can do percentages. That was an interesting exercise, but yes. Yep. we can do that.
Only they only did 30, it will, the accrual will change. Changes for that week.
No, not dynamically like you're suggesting. So if you're set up as a 40-hour-a-week person and you only work 30 hours, so if you wanted, yeah, you would just use the adjustment. You know, typically those 10 hours would be, you know, are we talking like admin leave or they're using accrual time or? Okay. Okay. Yes, you can manually adjust the adjust field here. You know, positive will increase balances, negative decrease balances. So yes, it's possible.
And you can include notes in those adjustments so that 2 years from now or whenever you're in audit and they ask you and you're like, oh, I remember that.
Yep.
It's an easy reference.
Yep, right there contains notes. Go ahead.
This app, basically want to replace QuickBooks.
Oh, yeah.
And how about those data we have in the QuickBooks in the previous 20, 30 years?
Oh, okay. So, whoa, no. And of course,
5 minutes.
it like,
Right, we're done.
okay, so let me do a little reload here. Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so talking about that, where you have that degree of data, I have a recommendation, which is if you want that in, you have your schedule ones from those past years, correct? Perfect. You can literally create those back years. And then in one adjusting transaction, just enter your schedule one information. It won't give you the level of detail that you're looking at, but it will allow you to, you know, put in and have, you know, income statements, you know, expenditures, revenues, et cetera. So that way your history and your bars will be maintained. If you want a bunch of information imported, it is possible. I would have to pursue you. That would be a conversation that Wes Hine and Jason Mullanen would need to have with you in talking about that back history. In general, I do know that entering back history is one of the reasons why I had several events of carpal tunnel syndrome in these kind of conversions. But it might be possible. In general, when we do a conversion from QuickBooks, you know, I take your chart of accounts, your employee list, your vendor list, and we import those items. As for back history, you know, the aggregates of your schedule one each year that you want to have a history, that's possible. But the detail of your transactions, maybe not so much. We would need to talk with, we'd have to talk with Wes. QuickBooks can export everything out to Excel, and we can do a lot of importation. But I don't know all the ins and outs of it and where we are with that. So it may be possible, but I don't know.
Question, how much is that?
In terms of dollars, I have no idea. They don't tell me those things. Not anymore. I'm the guy that does. You know, I don't get to talk monies. So I would suggest have that conversation with Jason Mullanen. If you need contact information, if you provide me your email address later, I can definitely chat with him about it. Okay, just a quick tour since we have left. Just for those of you who have Express and want to look, you know, at converting over to version 7. So we talked about the electronic signatures on the pay cards. You can suppress accrual totals now if you don't want to submit those values. Let's see, we have, he got a little more detail in the grant program and task headers. Don't ask me what that means, what a little more detail is. I'll have to dive in and look at that. You can suppress subtotals if you only have one program or task. You can use a user-defined footer instead of the standard footer on reports. And he's done some work on improving L&I logic. Okay, vouchers. He changed the edit screen so it's a full screen view. Here we go. When writing the invoice, the process was changed to avoid a rollback error that resulted in the loss of an invoice. If you've ever had that happen, it's really annoying. So, okay, he added cancel and save and close to the voucher screen. He's got the non-month date ranges saved correctly that we talked about earlier. When you're editing, the program task drop downs now show the description. And when you mouse over it, it shows the underlying code. He fixed earn comp not calculating as overtime. And he added a footer at the end of the ecology by task option with totals for the whole report. All report activity can now go to CSV. In your control panel, you can set the pay cards can search for match items. And he also added program and task descriptions in the search string. So when you're using the search box, it will look through the program and task descriptions for those particular things you're looking for. It writes, when you're doing an Excel export, it writes to XLSX, not just XLS. You can now save things as tables. Does anyone use tables in when you're doing Excel outputs? So this will natively create a table if you check that particular option. And then when you export dollar amounts, it will keep their decimal places with 0 cents instead of truncating it, as Excel love to do. And then dates or text fields that look like numbers or dates can save as text. So sometimes that's an annoying thing. When you have a date, it can change to a very interesting string in Excel. I think he managed to fix a lot of that.
What about allows for formatting pictures? What's that mean?
I think that when you
Like on our logo?
possibly, or you can also do Excel as an image or a picture.
Oh, okay.
Like when we do annual reports, remember we grab the table out of the workbook and we paste it into the Word document as an image. And I think he may have fixed, because he does have a logo system. You know, basically there's a default logo that can be selected. So it's not in multiple places like it used to be, one for your invoices, one for your vouchers, and so on. But there is a universal slot for your logo now that can go in, and then that logo place will inform all the other places where logos are used. And I think that's what he means. That's what he may mean with the image.
How about the check payment?
So when you're doing checks, those flow from AP. You post them to your general ledger. You can print checks. We do setups depending on what you have. In general, we like checks on top and bottom, no checks in the middle. That's bad. And like a 3-part perf laser check. We can set it up whatever you can provide. We just ask that the furniture be on there. Like your name, your organization. Yeah. So you can buy it wherever you want. I can work with it. Just make sure it's not blank. It's got to have like pay to the order of, and a line for date and dollar amount, that stuff. So, okay. Anyone have any questions or other features that they'd like to look at real quick here, since we are at 9:53? Not a free trial, but you can get demos. Yeah.
Can you talk about uploading backup documentation? So like I wrote a check and now the backup to that check, I would like to have access in there.
Okay, so typically that is, let me see where I got this. Okay, so accounts payables. You can do it through the vendor accounts and in accounts payable. There's a little paper clip here. Excuse me. When I do that, I can attach a document to a specific AP. I can attach a document to a specific vendor account. Depending on how you want to use this. I've seen people use it pretty badly. You know, they've like put their entire check run in one massive scanned document and then attached it to one vendor, and you're like, and then they say, well, why don't I see all the individual documents under each vendor? I'm like, well, you put the whole thing on one thing. If you want to do stuff like that, like you just want to scan in an entire list, I suggest creating a vendor specifically for that, like backup documentation vendor. Upload your entire scanned PDF file. You know, I mean, I've seen them like 10 or 12 or 18 megabytes, you know, it definitely gets big.
Based on what you've seen, what would you say the best practice is?
Well, frankly, best practice is attach the invoice to the vendor.
Yeah.
You know, one individual scan. It depends on how many APs you're dealing with. Are you dealing with 100 at a time? Because then, you know, your staff time gets a lot, you know, really when it gets right down to it. But ideally, you know, if you've got a quick way to do a scan, you know, you can scan in and attach to each one of your AP, the underlying documentation. It goes up and it sits on the cloud.
Is there an easy way to like print them for vouchering or include them in a voucher?
I don't, well, see, that's a good question. I don't think they would be, they don't, I don't think they flow into the voucher.
It's only in that. So Val has a question. How do you retrieve the attachments?
Okay, so there you can go to the vendor side here in transactions in your vendor accounts. Every vendor is going to have that list of documentation attached to it.
So if you attach it to the AP transaction, do you have to access it through AP?
No, because then it flows through the vendor account.
Oh,
You can
okay.
access it in vendors.
Okay, gotcha.
And what I was looking for here in Grant is if I look at transactions. If I open that check. Okay. Maybe one of the things here is that if there is underlying documentation underneath a given check, it'd be nice to have a little document attachment line here in the item.
Yeah.
So I can definitely ask and say, hey, can we link the backup documentation, the attachment here into the transactional list as well? Okay. We'll probably manage that. Otherwise, your document attachments are just found in your vendor accounts list on each vendor. There's the global document attachment up top here. You can see these are all like W9s. And then you have the individual document attachments for each individual person.
Cool.
All right. Any other questions?
Backup,
What's that?
backup.
Okay, you're running on a cloud system. So it's sitting on a server farm, wherever. I forget how many hours behind this particular server farm is. It's up there on the cloud and it has a rolling 7-day backup on it.
Can we do local backups?
I don't think so,
Okay.
because the software won't function in on-prem system. However, that is a good question. I guess this is something for you guys to think about. When you commit your data to a cloud-based system, just remember that that's a third-party server living up here. You do give up control physically having that data on site, but the benefit is when your town burns down, you know, you can still log on to the web from some terminal and data is there. Since I think West started in 1983. Yes. Any other questions?
In the 90s. Yeah.
Okay, if you guys want to look at any other specific thing, I could be around for a while, do your sessions
I'm
and so on.
sorry, I didn't bring my name.
Oh.
Thank you, Chad.